I've had a lot of success growing watermelons in my garden, but a little less growing melons until this season. Even though this bed looks like it's filled with only zinnias, trust me, there are some melons in here. These are honey melons. So in this video, I'm gonna give you 9 of our best tips for producing an abundance of melons, and cultivate that like button, because at the very end, I will be harvesting that melon and seeing just how well we grew them. The first tip is to respect its climate. Melons are a summer crop through and through. They absolutely love the heat. So you can see here, I have watermelons, which we've done a video on, but melons over here. And both of these crops did not start taking off until about late July, August for us here in San Diego. August, September actually weirdly are our hottest months here in San Diego. That's our summer, so to speak. So with melons, it's a really good plant that you can start in a seed cell or a seed starting tray of some kind, and then transplant into the garden once not only the air temperature is quite warm, but the soil temperature needs to be at 65 Fahrenheit or above before the melons really start to explode. So for those of you in colder climates, you can do that, transplant in when it's warm enough, or you can plant it and then put some sort of cover over the top to artificially increase the heat underneath where the melons are growing. Tip number 2 is to propagate your melons. Sometimes you gotta do that by hand. So right here I have a female melon flower. This one's actually spent, but I just wanna show you. You'll have a stem, you'll have sort of an immature lumpy fruit behind, and then this is a shriveled up flower in the front. And then if you look right here, these are alive still, these are male flowers. So you can tell it's male because there is no immature fruit kind of hanging out back here. So there's a very specific reason why I planted these zinnias in this melon bed. It's because I wanted to attract my native pollinators, because melons, being in the curcubit family, squash, cucumbers, melons, watermelons, they all have male-female flowers. They need to be pollinated by something, whether it's you as a gardener or pollinators. I've chosen pollinators, but if you don't have enough in your area, what you can do is just take a little paintbrush and take a male flower, get in there, get some pollen on, and then an opened female flower, you're gonna go ahead and just brush it in there, and then that will set this fruit. And this fruit will then, of course, start to swell up, and it will look like one of these incredible melons that are down here. Tip number 3 is to grab yourself a bag of fertilizer and make sure and fertilize your melons early on in the season. You see, melons put out an absolute boatload of leaves, especially early on. Every single one of these leaves is basically kind of just a dinner plate getting hit by the sun, filling up with energy that is then distributing to the rest of the plant, and of course, to those fruit. So early on in the season, you really want to apply something. What I have here is worm gold worm castings. Now, it's not early on in the season right now, but what you would want to do is just come in with a handful right around that base of the plant. Just get that in there. It's gonna help produce more leaves earlier, which means more fruit production, and the fruit that are produced will be sweeter. Now, with all plants, watering, of course, is crucial, but with melons, it's really important. The reason why is if you water your melons not enough, then they're not gonna produce enough leaves. They're gonna be sort of shriveled, and the flavor is just not gonna be there. Remember, most of them is comprised of water. Now, if you water it too much, especially at the end of its life, it's gonna swell and grow too quickly and actually explode from the inside from that pressure that's being built up. So what you could do when you're watering your melons is grab a hose and, you know, kind of just water like this and not really care too much. Now that's fine, but with melons being a curcubit, they're gonna get hit by a lot of leaf-borne sort of diseases, like powdery mildew or certain blights. So what we like to do here is keep them on a drip irrigation system. So I just have a drip line that's coming in here. It's actually a little buried right now, but it just runs a couple times a week. So with melons, they need more water than your average crop, like maybe 1.5 to 2 inches of water a week, and space that out every couple days or so. So wait till the soil completely dries, give it another drink, and then let it dry and repeat that process. Now, the inch of water a week thing kind of comes from a time when we actually got rain and everyone knew what that meant. People as gardeners, we don't really know what that means anymore. So a good rule of thumb is to just moisten it so it's wet to about 6 to 12 inches deep, and then water it again when the first few inches of soil are dry. I really want to dial back my watering when I notice that my melons are getting close to being ripe. Again, to make sure I don't crack them, but also to make sure that that flavor isn't too watery and dilute. So about 2 weeks beforehand, just cut your watering back. If you are a space conscious gardener, or you just want to be a little more economical with how you allocate different plants in your space. Melons are actually a fantastic crop to grow vertically. This is not a melon right here, but it's a great example of a type of trellis you may want to use. This is actually a squash, same family, different plant. So what happens with melons compared to squashes is they're much more spherical and also way more dense. So if you do grow melons vertically, you'll want to support them. Some people will use a piece of pantyhose or breathable fabric or a bag of some kind to keep a little bit of that weight on the trellis material itself. So you want to use a pretty sturdy trellis, something made out of metal or a very sturdy wood that you know is going to be able to support the weight. But it's a really good way to grow upwards to keep the plants off the ground, keep pests and disease off, keep airflow on, and also put it in a place where maybe more pollinators are so you don't have to do that hand pollination trick. Another tip for melons that's absolutely not mandatory, but something to keep in mind, and actually kind of an interesting little fact about them, is you're gonna have a plant that throws out a lot of different vines, and they're gonna wanna set as many fruit as they can reasonably support. So I'm actually really curious if I follow this tip or not, because in this birdie's tall round bed, they've kind of gotten all tangled and they haven't been spreading out like they would if they were growing on the ground. So the tip is this: every vine, so here's a vine right here, which this melon is connected to, which we hopefully will be harvesting later, is connected to this vine right here, which has another melon on it. You're gonna wanna keep melons to no more than about 3 per main vine, and that's going to be because you don't want them to be competing with one another. Something you can do early on is actually just clip off fruit so you get about 2 or 3 per vine. And then another thing you can do is audit and see how close they are to one another. You wouldn't really want a melon offshoot coming off here and then maybe another one here and another one right here if there were melons that were better spaced. You actually want them to kind of be nice and evenly spaced, almost as far apart as they can be on the same vine to help with the nutrients and the flavor. For those of you growing in a colder climate, you still can grow melons. Obviously it's easier in a warmer one, but a couple considerations. Number one, soil temp. We already mentioned you want it to be about 65 Fahrenheit or higher. You can actually fake that if you want to by putting something down on the surface of your soil, maybe burlap or black plastic or something like that to artificially raise the temperature, which means you can plant your melons earlier in the season. Another thing you can do, take a look at this birdie's tall 8-in-1 bed here, which has the watermelon in it. You could build a simple frost cover, but actually the point is to heat it up underneath, and that will also help. And then finally, cantaloupes tend to be a little bit more cold tolerant as a variety, so skew towards those and just pick varieties in general that are cold tolerant. We're almost to the point where we can harvest and eat this delicious honey melon, but harvesting melons in general actually depends a lot on the variety. So take cantaloupes, for example, which this is not. This is more of a honeydew style. Cantaloupes are what's called climacteric, meaning that after you take them off the plant, they will continue to ripen up and sweeten up, whereas this honeydew really won't. So if, let's say you had a cantaloupe, what you'd be watching for is you'd be watching for that sort of rough, abrasive skin to get nice and rough. You'd look for that shine that's on the melon to kind of go away. And then you'd also look for the tendril right behind it, which I'll show you on this one in a second, to become brown and dry. And cantaloupes you can harvest what's called full slip, meaning that by just simply pulling, it will detach itself from the vine without too much effort from yourself. So that's a really great way to know if cantaloupes are ready, but melons in general can get ripe really fast. So you don't want to miss the window. With cantaloupes being climacteric, you can actually harvest them a little bit underripe and let them ripen indoors. That is not the case with this honeydew. The moment has come, my friends. Let's see how this melon tastes. So, how do I know that this one's at least getting ready? Remember, a honeydew style is not climacteric and it is not ripe at full slip. So you kind of have to look for a couple different signs. The first sign is this. Take a look at this. Looks like nothing, right? That's actually the biggest sign. This is the tendril that is right behind this particular fruit, and this tendril is brown, shriveled, and dried up, which is a very good sign that this is getting close to being ripe. The other sign you want to look for, and this is an interesting one because it's more of a honey sort of melon with a different color, but you kind of want to look for the presence of a field spot. See, this is a little bit lighter here on the bottom, which is kind of what we're looking for. And then the skin itself should look a little more shiny and waxy and not as sort of dusty or dusky as it would earlier on in its life. The final thing you can do is give it a bit of a press here at this blossom end, and you should see a little bit of a springiness there or a little bit of a bounce back. And you can also give it a smell, and it should have a lightly sort of sweet smell. So This is pretty dang close. I'm gonna go ahead and harvest it, and I'll see you in a second when we cut it open. Woohoo, the moment is here, my friends. We did it last year with the watermelon. We're doing it again with this beautiful honey melon. Let me hope I'm not disappointing you. Let's see what we have. That cross section. Ooh. I feel like we're in a really good spot here. This looks quite solid to me. Almost has a little bit of a fig type of look to it. Field warm. Let's give this a taste. It is very seedy, but it is very sweet. And honestly, that sweetness comes out even more if you toss this bad boy in the fridge for a little bit. That cold, I don't know, brings out the sweetness, but melons are a summer favorite. And let me give you a little bonus here. Cultivate that like button for this epic tip. Scoop out the middle, scoop out the seeds, scoop in fresh vanilla ice cream. Eat it out here on a summer's day. It's the best thing you're ever gonna have. Till next time, my friends, good luck in the garden and keep on growing.